Absolute Flash, issue 1, Jeff Lemire writing with Nick Robles on the art. So, we've had the Trinity. This is now we're starting to expand to some of the other characters, sort of the next tier down, if you will. And I wasn't looking, I knew the previews were in a lot of the issues over the last few weeks. I didn't really look at them, so I never actually knew going into this book that it was Wally that we were going to mainly be following.
Oh.
That was a surprise. Yeah, I was jealous surprised, but he's like, my name is Wally West, and I'm like, wait, whoa, we're doing Wally? Okay. Way to go. So this book is very in media res, the way it starts, and it kind of jumps around timeline-wise, where Wally, seemingly has powers from some kind of accident already, and it sort of jumps back and sort of gives you a bit of his status quo, how he knew Barry, but Barry's a scientist here working at a sort of military base, which is where Wally's dad is stationed. And there's some tension there. Ever since Wally's mum's been dead, they've not been getting on. So that's kind of the character setup that's there. But seemingly, yeah, there's some kind of accident, and we don't have all the pieces yet to know exactly. Because Wally keeps saying in his narration, like, it's my fault. Oh, I can't face them after what I did. And it doesn't seem like him just stumbling into like an experiment and then an accident happening is what he's referring to necessarily. It feels like there's maybe more to learn about why he feels so guilty about something, coming up. But it sets all this stuff up, and then ultimately, his dad, or at least the military, have sent a team after him, and we get kind of a weird version of the Rogues, like the absolute version of the Rogues, which it took me a second to realize that's what I was looking at, because the mustache in Captain Cold was like, it just looks like such a different guy that I'm like, oh wait, he's got the little white fuzzy collar. This is meant to be Captain Cold. It took me a second for it to...
And then he puts on the glasses, right, along the page. And you're like, oh, okay. It was giving me Hulk vibes, right? Like, Wally is this monster that's being chased by his dad, and these are like the Hulkbusters, and it's the Rogues, right? Because you got Boomerang. That's the first one we kind of get teased at, where the Boomerang's following Wally as he's going into this cave.
It's kind of
I guess that was a boomerang from that, though. Like, fair play, because I did not just scream boomerang, did it?
Well, it kind of is, but it's like, it looks kind of like a drone, but then when you realize it goes back to someone, you're like, oh no, I can see why that's a boomerang now. Yeah. Golden Glider, and I'll admit, I did not, like, I think that, based on the name, they say Jesse, so I assume that person with the orange circle face is Trickster, but I wasn't getting Trickster from the outfit. I'll say that.
if I'm taking a guess, this is Lemire giving maybe Native American Trickster designation, right? Because this looks something very much like at least out in the Southwest, some of the Native American, masks that were used and stuff. So it would not surprise me, knowing how Lemire tends to work in the First Nations people up in his Canada stuff. But yeah, it took me a second too, because I was like, wait, James Jesse, that's the Trickster, but we don't really even see what they do here, right? It's only Boomerang and Cold, really. But I think it's only Boomerang that we see do anything.
In terms of use his ability, yeah, he's the only one that we see actually like do something with his stuff. But I assume we'll see that as time goes on. I mean, most of the issues dealt with the flashbacks. It's more kind of one that Barry kind of sticks up for Wally, wants to show him what they're working on, even though he's not really supposed to, because Wally's this bored kid who has to get dragged around these army bases. Doesn't have any friends because his dad's always moving him around. But so there's kind of a friendship there, and then it also shows kind of the relationship that Wally has with his dad, where we get to see Wally's dad. He kind of tries to sit down with him in one of the flashbacks and have a kind of a heart-to-heart. But he kind of, as soon as Wally starts bringing up Barry, he gets kind of agitated and starts trying to put his foot down, kind of shows some of the tensions they're having. So it kind of gives you this sort of, like, not troubled kid, but like kind of, teen runaway kind of vibes, even though he's not actually run away. Well, yeah, anyway. It kind of is in the process of the story with the powers, but...
The thing that I like, too, is that when we see the powers manifest, it's almost like you're seeing people come through the Speed Force or whatever it is, but it also could just be Wally moving at such a speed, right? We're only kind of getting shadows of him through it, which I think is a pretty new way to kind of show the Speed Force or whatever this is, because we don't even know really what it is yet, right?
Yeah, true. It may not technically be the Speed Force.
And then like when he does the flashbacks, it's almost like he's jumping back into them, right? So during the first one, we get the title sequence page, right?
It's like,
and
it's
then
like
he closes
his mind's racing. I just wanted to jump in and say that.
Because
even the narration panels in that first page, they kind of overlap and they're kind of like blurring together a little bit. It's like his mind's frazzled because he's keeping up with everything.
Yeah, and then when he closes his eyes and opens them, it's 2 days ago. And he's walking, down the train tracks and whatever. So I wonder if there's any significance to that.
I think it's just the idea that his mind's racing, thinking about what led to this. So he's like mind's jumping back, and it gives that kind of like frazzled nature of like going through it. Because I really liked when he's running into the caves, when he's trying to get away from the rogues, and it's actually like interpaneled with like the accident where he went to the lab and he saw Barry in this like bubble thing in a suit, and presumably Barry was maybe trying to actually just scientifically achieve super speed, maybe, or maybe he's doing something else, but my instinct was to assume that he was trying to intentionally do Speed Force stuff, but obviously knew it was dangerous to stand out there, and clearly bad things happened as a result. But it does look like Barry is dead, and I suppose something I never really thought about when I read this earlier is Barry's body's in this cave out in the desert and not in the lab, which maybe suggests like did Wally take his body here with his super speed at some point?
Maybe, or it has maybe something to do with some distortions that have come from whatever they were tapping into.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe. I don't know.
But he's clearly going to be wearing that suit later, because that's the suit that we've seen him. Even when it flash forwards at the end, it looks like Wally's putting something on. It's very reminiscent of whatever Barry was wearing.
Yeah, it's not the exact same, but it's definitely the symbols based on the symbol that he had on the suit.
It's a very functional-looking Flash suit.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. So it looks like Barry's dead. It looks like we're starting the Absolute Universe with him dying on the treadmill, effectively. Like he's already gone.
Some pretty damning evidence. It's not like they're just telling us that he might be dead. There is a body.
No.
There is a skeleton.
There's a corpse.
It's a desiccated husk, but
Yes.
Yeah.
And also the whole point of what the Absolute Universe is supposed to represent, right? The Flash is something that we always associate with like legacy, and here effectively it's been taken away, right? Because Wally has no friends that we know of, right? And he's being chased by the rogues who are this group unit. So it really seems like in this Absolute Universe he is on his own, So there's no one else to kind of rely back on. There's none of that Jay Garrick, Barry Allen, that entire thing to go talk to about this type of stuff.
Even forgetting the other Flashes, he doesn't even seem to have Iris in this universe.
No,
it's cool.
Well, that's what I was going to get to, because this is the first time I can really remember seeing Wally's dad, right? Because we never really even see the parents, and maybe I've seen his mom in some old Teen Titan stuff, but it's usually just Aunt Iris. So. He's a solitary figure, which is quite different than what we're used to with Wally, right? Who just kind of like Dick is kind of at the center and kind of the heart of the DCU.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we definitely hear about his parents. Like if you read the original stuff back when Wade was writing and sort of like filling in the like the backstory and whatnot, there was definitely talk of who his parents were and how he likes spending more time with Iris than them, but it is different. Giving him this very cold upbringing and almost turning his dad into, like you said, like compare it to Hulk, the General Ross type character that's almost hunting his own son as kind of this like weird science experiment gone wrong, is an interesting dynamic. It does make it feel different in the same way that Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman have all got very different. I mean, arguably this is even more different than any of them in some ways, but it does feel like there's a lot more playing around here with like what the various things are. The fact that the rogues are a team that are part of this like military group that are set out.
I get that they're the antagonists here, but they don't give me villain vibes. Not like the guy that shows up at the very end, because I don't know if we want to get to that last.
We'll get to that in a minute. I mean, I do. Villain, but to be fair, even the rogues normally are kind of like empathetical
Doing their own
villains.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not they're not Thawne, right? Thawne is like evil
Right.
villain.
Mm-hmm.
The rogues are a bit more like, occasionally they could maybe do a good thing because they care about the city type characters. If anything, this version felt a bit colder right now, but maybe once we get to know them a bit better. But right now, like Cold here feels very like stern and very like by the book.
Yeah, he feels like a military officer. Like, all right, we got a job to do. Let's go bring this kid in. It doesn't feel like it's personal, or they're doing this because it's the Flash or whatever, which I did like, because and all the designs that they've updated too. It's fun. I like seeing that kind of stuff. Like, because it's still Captain Cold, right? You mentioned the liner around the hood, right? But then he puts on the glasses, and we don't get to see the freeze gun, or what does he call it? The whatever he calls his weapon. We didn't get to see that, but yeah.
He pulls it out, but we never see him fire it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure we're building up to that. There's a lot of things here that we can play with. Because then obviously one of the things was like, okay, this is the 4 rogues that are on this little team, but there's obviously more rogues to play with. And there's a little epilogue here where it says flash forward 1 year later, which I think to me this solidifies the idea that this entire first arc is going to be told out of order. Like this is going to be like the storytelling style for the entire arc. Because even the end of this issue saying, hey, we're jumping to a year later in the aftermath of everything, and we get a glimpse of him putting on a suit and maybe doing whatever else he's going to be doing. We see like some gorillas in some of this like monitor footage, which might suggest that there's going to be some Grodd related or Gorilla City related stuff that happens.
Well, and they look green, so is that just distortion from the monitor?
It might be because some of the other ones look all red, so I was wondering if maybe that's
just
just
look like a lava monster though on the top one.
Yeah,
it does. Which would be Tar Pit, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, I just realized where this guy might be. Because it just says 1 year later, all the monitors, there's a green hand sticking up. Is this Brainiac out in the middle of the Nevada desert?
No, Matt, that's Mirror Master coming out of the mirror, the hand.
Yeah, I think the green is just the weird light.
I'm dumb. Don't. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not editing that out.
The monitors and it sunk in. I was like, wait a minute, is this like what happens after?
It's at the lab, right?
Yeah, I think it's the lab.
It's just Project Olympus, which is what
right. I saw the green head and then it clicked, and I was like, wait a minute. No, I'm done. Dumb. Ignore me.
No. So yeah, this is Mirror Master who's watching all this, and what does he say here then? Mirror, mirror on the wall, time to make the whole world fall. So.
Time to make this whole world fall. And I think, especially because this whole world is bold compared to the rest, it feels like maybe that's intentional, playing with some alternate worlds to different dimensions.
Well, keep in mind, there's only 2 worlds right now, technically, because of what's going on with the universe. So I think this feels like it's positioning Mirror Master as being a bigger deal than the rogues themselves, or maybe that's not the right way of phrasing it, but just that he's a separate thing that maybe's got more bigger goals than the rogues have in their position. I mean, maybe they'll end up siding with them or something later on, but the way this teased him at the end made it feel like he's a big bad as opposed to the rogues who feel like they're an ongoing set of supporting characters.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's interesting. I will say that out of all the Absolute books, this is the 4th one we've had. This is probably I thought I enjoyed this. I'm interested in where it's going. It's probably my least favorite story-wise out of the 4 right now. But I think it's the sort of thing, because of the way it's being told, that the more it reveals itself as it's going out of order, I might fall for it more.
I agree with some of that. I think I like it more than Absolute Superman. I'm really not really big on that book at all. This here, though, I'm not really sold on the story. I like the craft of it. I like the format, the way it's playing with the structure. I like the visual storytelling it's doing, like the yellow and the red, like the way that pops so constantly. Like things like that are like, okay, there's enough here for me to be interested. But as an issue 1, I don't think it grabs you that much.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same grab at you like the other 3 did. However, being that like Pete said, the way that the story is structured, I feel like it's going to come together and it's going to be really fulfilling by the time we get there. So, high expectations for the rest of it, though.
Yeah, I think it's maybe missing the core like thing, right? Because I think Absolute Batman, it was like, okay, he's a more angry, violent Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things are a bit darker and grungier. Absolute Wonder Woman, oh, she's fighting giant monsters and it feels like she's a larger than life action hero. Absolute Superman, it's this science fiction story that's like, where Krypton didn't end exactly the way we thought it did, and all the other things going on with the different suit and all that. This, like Connor said, is the interesting elements here are how it's being told, and it is really well done and how it's building up its story. But I wouldn't say that anything they've done with the stuff they've done with the villains here and making them a bit different are like, okay, that's cool, and that's them playing with what the villains are a little bit. But it's not quite given us the full hook yet. The closest it gets, I suppose, is just this idea that he doesn't have family and the legacy, and possibly his dad's like a General Ross type character hunting him. And I think that could become a bigger hook the more we see it play out, and the more we see like him actually actively trying to find his son, and like what are his motivations. Is he conflicted about what he's going to do when he finds him, or does he just consider him a liability now because of what's happened? Is he dangerous as far as he's concerned now because of the powers that he's absorbed or whatever it is? So, and I will say this though, if part of the excitement of the Absolute Universe is eventually some of these characters meeting the regular versions, because I'm definitely excited with that, with like say Batman and so on. I do think it would be interesting seeing this Wally meet the Flash family from the regular universe at some point, and seeing just how different it is with all those people in place.
Because LEMIRE really sets the tone that he's lonely at the beginning.
Yes.
The way that he walks on the train tracks and he gets back to the army base and the guards are like, oh, you shouldn't be out, man. Like, we'll let you back in, kind of vibe. And you just get the thing that he's looking for some type of camaraderie. And so just the idea, even the other absolute heroes for the Absolute Justice League, right? Him seeing that there's other people out there like him that have powers and all this other type of stuff. I'm curious to see how he takes with that.
Yeah, it's it really goes out of its way to be like, oh, this is the middle of nowhere. We're in the desert. This town's not near anything. The military runs this town. Whatever's there, it's got guards around the base and all that kind of thing. And when you think of like, oh, the military have set up like a testing facility with housing in a desert, what's the first thing you think of? You think of Oppenheimer and the nuclear bomb. You think of that sort of
Los
thing.
Alamos.
And Barry even does admit, he's like, hey, obviously this is military funded, so they want weapons out of what we're doing here, but that's just the first application of what I'm doing. But it does kind of paint this picture of like, why are they out in the middle of nowhere? Like, what were they trying to achieve? Was it simply super speed, or is the super speed just a byproduct of what hit Wally, but the actual goal of the experiment was something else, something different?
Yeah. Well, what's up with the mutated monkey? Right, that he runs into.
I have no idea.
As Wally is walking through, there's it kind of resembles Gleek from the Wonder Twins, but it has kind of like this fin-like thing on its head. And
here's an idea. What if in this universe, Gorilla City are actually created by a lab, right? They're actually like these like race of mutated monkeys, or apes, I should say. Kind of like I guess Planet of the Apes in a weird way, in like those modern movies.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And there's because I also get like I don't feel like his dad's fully like because Wally is 15 years old, and if he's hanging around this weird mad scientist that works for the military, if I had a 15-year-old that was palling around with some dude working on these weird experiments, I don't think I would exactly be happy. So I'm curious to see what exactly the experiments are, right? Are they creating super intelligent apes?
I mean, I think it's a bit unfair to just refer to Barry as a mad scientist when, one, he's been hired to do this, and it feels like his dad's kind of his boss. And so I don't think he gets to cast judgment on the scientist working for him as just some mad scientist dude.
You have to be a little
Maybe-
bit mad scientist to want to do that, though.
Yeah, it's just the way that he's like, yeah, I don't want it to go to weapons, but it's going to go to weapons. There's just a complicity in Barry too. That there's a tad of darkness there. There's a reason why, like, I don't think that his dad's just a jerk being like, don't go around that guy. There's something there.
Possibly. I almost read that at least in the scene of him just not liking the idea of like Wally like finding a father figure, like kind of thing.
It could be very much Doc and Marty, right? That just this one of those things. We don't need to explain it. There's nothing bad going on. It's just
if Doc died 5 minutes in.
Yeah. But I'm a sucker for Flash. I'm happy to be reading a Flash book. So I like what Lemire did through one issue.
Yeah, I'm happily down for more of this. I have to say, I'm curious to see a bit more of various things. And I think on the subject of that mutated monkey, I think it's worth mentioning that one of the things that's emphasized is its brain, which maybe furthers my idea of like maybe they're going to create the smart gorillas that can talk. But I don't know. We'll see. But yeah. So I guess I mean, Car, did you give much of a thought what you thought of it?
Yeah, like I said, I don't have any strong feelings on the story right now. The craft, I think, is really good, but I'm just... I'll see how I feel after a couple of issues. I need some sort of actual hook, I think, to keep me invested long term, because there's no like emotional hook here. There's no real story mystery hook. There's nothing really compelling that makes me want to come back beyond the craft. So I will for now. Well, how long that lasts, we'll see.
Well, it's only one issue. I think it's notable that the other books all gave interesting, or not interesting, but like strong supporting cast to the characters. Like both Batman and Wonder Woman have so Wonder Woman's got the most sort of endearing, where it's like, hey, there's this group of characters, Steve, Etta, so on, who by the end of that first arc, it was like, oh, these are all cool allies that are interesting to discover how they're connected to her in this world. Superman kind of has the opposite, where they're all in the backstory, so you get to see his parents and what his life was like before then and how empty it is now, and that kind of works in that context. Batman has his group of friends that are kind of like some of the usually villains, but here they're the kind of these other orphans that he's very pally with, and that's kind of an interesting dynamic. And obviously his mother's still alive, and that's a connection. Here, the whole point, as we've been pointing out, is that Wally doesn't have any of what he normally has. And the one relationship that might be positive with Barry is taken away. So I think what I would be looking for to sort of address that potential complaint is that he does find someone to confide in, someone that becomes a regular support of some kind.
My concern with that is they'll actively not do that as part of the, well, this is how different Wally is. He's alone. Like he's the loner of this universe.
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually you have to give him someone, but maybe this first arc could be...
Iris is out there still, right? We would think.
Well, we don't know. I mean, I assume she will pop up, but we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
There's presumably a version of Iris, whether or not...
Yeah, and I'm like, maybe that's his, person that he can go to, because it would be his dad's sister, right? That's how they would be related. They both have the West last name. Yeah. So he's like, please don't tell my dad. I just need help. And she's kind of his rock or whatever. And that's his tie. I don't know. Because it's definitely not going to be Barry. That's for sure.
No, I don't know. I'm curious to see where they go with it. But yeah. All right. And the art, we haven't talked about too much. Obviously, we talked about the reds and the yellows and like all the way it sort of presented the super speed as his mind was rushing through different things. But yeah, I think coloring's very strong. Some with the reds and the yellows, sure, but even when he walks in the experiment and everything's all this sort of pink color, and it just feels very distinctly different to a lot of the other color schemes in the book. I think that's very intentional. So,
I would also say that Robles' art is kind of the closest we've seen in the Absolute Universe to more mainstream DC. It's not quite house style, right? but it feels more than, you know, Dragotta or I'm drawing a blank. I love him.
Sherman?
For Wonder Woman. Sherman. Yeah. You know, it's just more typical what I think of when I think of DC. So, but it's all good. I think it looks great. I think the breakdowns are all there.
Yeah,
you know?
it's very clean, and it does that thing where it's like really simple box panels, except for when we're doing super speed and things get really kind of wacky and like overlapping and all that, and that gives it a sense of urgency that's different from everything else, which makes a lot of sense. Also, I want to point out there's a little bit of Power Ranger style color scheming going on here. Barry's wearing a red t-shirt for a lot of his scenes under his lab coat, and there's scenes where Wally's in his bedroom and stuff where he's wearing a yellow shirt with just a little red trim around the neck.
Yeah, and Wally's headphones are red with a yellow lightning bolt on.
Yeah, so there's a lot of the, you know, the color scheming like popping up in their regular outfits. So just a nice touch. All right, Matt, what are you giving Absolute Flash?
I'm going to give this a 7.5.
Okay. Seems lower than I thought you were going to give that, but okay. Connor?
I mean, I can bump it up to 8 if you would like.
It's
I
not
almost expect everything from you to be an 8 or more. Me, I'm going to give us 6.5. I'll give it a 6.5.
I actually agree with the 7.5. I think that's just a bit on the money. I think it's pretty good, and I think there's potential here. But it didn't swing at me out of the gate quite the way that the others did. But if I compare this to Lemire's other book that's going on right now, this was a much better issue 1 than his JSA.
Definitely.